to Books, Kids, and Creations, a part of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. I'm your host, Tracy Blom, and I interview people who inspire and uplift future generations with their work. And holy moly, I have quite the guest today. Simone Amelia Jordan is a legend in hip hop journalism. Oh my gosh, she just came out with a new book. Thank you, Simone, for being here.
Oh my gosh, I'll let you call me a legend. I don't think I could ever say that.
Yes.
Thank you, Tracy. It's so great to connect with you.
Yes, and I was just so we connected because I listened to Hip Hop Nation and I happened to listen to your recent interview, which was also promoting your brand new book, which we'll get into in just a moment. But I was so moved by your story, and I can't wait to share with our listeners who you are and all that you've achieved if you haven't heard of her. So you are Australian, if listeners can't tell from the accent, but how how have you, I guess, gotten into journalism as a whole? Because it seems like some things from a young age just call at us, and I kind of feel like you were called from journalism and music. So how did that come to you as a child?
But yeah, you're right, Tracy, that those two things came to me at the same time, basically. And I love that this podcast is kids, books, and creations because those three things, when I was a child, falling in love with books and being creative was, I guess, my gateway to hip hop too, because it's all words and it's all storytelling at the end of the day. I fell in love with hip hop because my family, who are Lebanese, my mother is from Lebanon, my father is from a small country in the Mediterranean called Cyprus. And I was born and raised in Sydney, Australia. And then I moved to a very kind of monocultural town where my family stood out very much in the late 1980s. And I experienced racism for the first time. And that was at the time when hip hop was really in its golden age.
Yeah.
And the artists, their self-empowerment, Queen Latifah and Rakim and Salt and Pepper. And it was just that pro-Black consciousness resonated and trickled down through to me and so many other kids around the world that were, I guess, feeling marginalized within their communities. And even though I understood that they were speaking for their people and to their people, I understood that very much. It also allowed me to explore pride in my cultural background too. And so I started wanting to rap first. And that didn't really work out. I think a lot of people that fall in love with hip hop, like that's their first intro into it.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, well, maybe this type of storytelling isn't really my thing.
But you
But
tried it.
so I tried it. I tried it. Like the first chapter of the book is a little excerpt from my rap, which is just, mind blowing. The
Yeah.
lyrical dexterity is incredible at 9 years old. But um, it's so funny now that my niece, she's only 7 and she wants to be a rapper. It's so cute. She's really good with words. So
You're
anyway,
like, I wonder where you got this from.
I know exactly, exactly, just like her auntie. And so then I decided to become a rap reporter because telling stories, and especially telling rappers stories in a country like Australia where they weren't being told authentically, became my mission. And I really had that mission from a very young age. And I
Yeah.
was blessed, as you said, to know that mission and to continue it throughout my life.
And you were raised by a single mother
Yeah.
and you have a sister. So do you feel like having female support behind you and having good family life and good women in your life who believed in you helped push you on that mission a little bit?
Absolutely. Yes, I was raised by a single mother. I have a little sister, and I was also raised by my grandmother. And so it was a very matriarchal environment that I was raised in. And these are tough women, right? And shout out to all the single mothers because
Yes.
they have such a soft spot in my heart. I know the struggles, and my mum shielded me from so much of her pain, and yeah, I just my heart is full when I speak about single mothers and the journey that they go on, and single parents in general too. So, yeah, the women energy in my life has been extremely strong and made me resilient And I always have uplifted young women throughout my career too, because I didn't really have a mentor coming up. And so mentoring young women has become very important in my career now.
That's so incredible, and so I'm sure that the people that you do mentor are so thankful for that. And one thing that I really latched onto with your story was that when you were in Australia, you really didn't have magazines that cost less than $25. Where and so you were like, well, maybe I'll just start my own. And you actually did start Urban Hitz magazine, and then that just kept the momentum going, and you ended up working for a rock and roll type of magazine
Yes,
at one
yes,
point. And
yeah,
I just thought it was incredible that they weren't interested in listening or talking to the artists that you were like, hey, J-Lo, hey,
yeah.
Aaliyah, like they just weren't interested in covering it at that time. It's just mind-blowing to me.
Which thank God they weren't, because then I got to score those huge interviews at such a young age. I know, like, and thank you for taking the time to research the backstory. That really means a lot. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was an intern at this rock magazine. It was called Juice Magazine. The owner really kind of based it. It was an Australian version of Rolling Stone, basically.
okay.
And so we had no hip hop and R&B magazines. I was buying them, as you said, for $25 thanks to freight charges. I was buying Vibe and The Source and Double XL and all these great magazines. And so I was interning at this rock music magazine, and I said, listen, I know you guys don't like hip hop and R&B music, but please let me do any interviews that come through that get pitched to the magazine.
Yeah,
Now, these interviews at the time were, like you said, Jennifer Lopez. This was my first real serious in-person interview was her. And when I met her, I started crying. And
oh,
I was like, you don't know how much your presence in Hollywood means to a girl that looks like me, because, obviously she didn't have Middle Eastern background,
yeah,
but she kind of filled in that middle space between someone I loved like Janet Jackson,
yeah,
or like a Madonna. She was really kind of in the middle. And, I had Paula Abdul before her.
yeah.
But
We
there
all
were, yeah, there were few and far between. So I really I got a chance to meet her, which was incredible when I was 20, I think 20 years old. And then before her on the phone, I interviewed Alia, and it was 1 month before she passed away.
oh,
Yeah, which was absolutely incredible. And we were around the same age. And I remember chatting to her about, oh my gosh, my questions were like, who is your celebrity crush? Like, oh my God. Actually, I think people still ask those questions.
they do.
Yeah. And so that was an incredible chat. So, yes, I got to interview so many great artists because I was in a space where they didn't take it seriously. And then I
Yeah,
went on to start my own magazine in Australia, which was a hard slog, but I made it. So, yeah.
you did. And I love that you just kept chasing this dream. And that I love that that really lends into the title of your book, Tell Her She's Dreamin', a memoir and for ambitious girls.
That's right. A memoir for ambitious girls. I just did The Breakfast Club yesterday, Power 105.
Oh my God.
Huge. Yeah, for an Australian to be on the biggest hip hop and R&B radio show was mind-blowing. And Charlemagne, the host, was asking me about the title. Like, what is Tell Her
Yeah,
She's Dreaming?
yeah,
Yeah. And I was saying to him, it's a very classic Australian saying, tell him he's dreaming. And they say it really like with that Aussie accent, like, tell him he's dreaming. And it's from a famous Australian movie called The Castle. And I was trying to interpret it. And I'm like, it's like, you think like you'll never get there. And
yeah,
Charlemagne was like, yeah, it's like you're bugging. I'm like, that's exactly what it is. That's the definition in America. You're bugging. That's exactly
yeah,
what so, yeah.
yeah. Well,
That's what I was
I love
told
the
a lot.
book, what I've
Mm.
read of it so far, and I think that any girl or boy could pick up your book and just feel the journey that you've been on. And it didn't stop in Australia. You actually went, over to New York City And from what I gather, it was in the height of January, the coldest winter months, and so probably coming from Australia, that was a shock too. But
Two
um,
suitcases and a dream. And I
yeah,
definitely was not prepared for East Coast winter, let me tell you that.
yeah, it's brutal. And I think that your story is so cool. And then from New York City, you ended up getting, you worked for The Source, correct? And you also worked for, is it Dr. J's?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. What was that experience like? Was it everything that you thought it would be, or how did that kind of keep you moving forward?
Yeah, that was a great experience. I was hired by drjays.com. Dr. J's are a very famous retail chain of what was called urban fashion back then. And they hired me from Sydney, from when I was editor of Urban Hitz magazine, to start content on their fashion website. And this was very early on when they were one of the first fashion retailers to incorporate content into what they were doing. This is 2007 I landed. And so it was an amazing experience. Because of the clothing brands that were associated with the rappers and the artists, I got this kind of, I used to have to beg for interviews, but I had this kind of in because we were making the brands money, right, as a retailer. And so I got to speak with, I met Jay-Z. I got to interview Beyonce's mother, Tina Knowles, when they had House of Dairy on. I
Wow.
interviewed Nelly, LL Cool J, Young Jeezy, all these artists that had clothing lines, right? And so, it was incredible. It was just an incredible experience. And then I went on from Dr. J's to Hip Hop Nation, where you heard me.
Yes, yes,
That was a return for me. I had a show on there with DJ Green Lantern, and Tracy, I've been so blessed. And obviously, the book details there are a lot of bumps in the road as well,
right,
because chasing your dreams in the music industry when it's so competitive, and I really, my anchor is my family, and they were on the other side of the world. So sometimes
yeah,
I was flailing, I was losing
yeah,
my footing, and it was a ride. It was a wild ride, and the book details how it goes from those high and low moments in the States, and then which I'm not sure if you're up to that part, all the stress and everything kind of comes crashing down
yeah.
when I get Crohn's disease and get very sick at one point.
And that was right around COVID, correct?
So I got really sick in New York
Mm.
about 10 years into being there. So about 2015, 2016. And then I got so sick that I had to pack up and leave. And it broke my heart. And I
Yeah,
headed back to Australia. And everyone in Australia was like, you did 10 years. You got the gig at the end of those 10 years as the content director of the magazine you grew up on. So I got
yeah,
a gig at the Source magazine, but then it got ripped away from me because I got this Crohn's disease and got really
hard.
sick. So I went back to Australia to get healthy because our
Mhm.
healthcare system is much more accommodating than the
Yes,
American healthcare system.
yeah, I
And
bet.
then it took me a little while, it took me a little while to get back on my feet. But then during COVID, I started to write the book. I started to write the memoir. And I love how excited you look speaking about
Yes.
this.
Well, I am because I think that I know COVID was terrible for so many, millions of people, but I think a lot of people took that moment to be in quiet space to create the things that they had time to create at those moments. Like I know so many writers who started books during COVID because
Yes,
it's like,
yes,
well, I've had this idea or I'm here locked in my house and
yes,
I'm going to take time to create
yeah.
and see if I can maybe move people with my creations. And so many good things did come out of that downtime and that pause in
Yeah.
history, I think.
Amen. Amen. It was a horrible time of history, and I don't think we've really reconciled with it just
Right.
yet. But yeah, I think that I used that time to start writing this book. And it was lockdown, and my husband and my daughter was about 3. So I was going to kill my husband because you know being with someone all day every day during COVID was not easy, and we live in an apartment. So I
Yeah.
said to
Yeah.
channel this energy into something before I strangle you. So
Right.
I started to write the book, and it was very cathartic. And I always thought my story was very singular, Tracy, because I'm very much one of one in my career path and what I've done.
Yeah.
But as I started writing and getting all these notes down, I realized, look, everybody has a dream and
Yes.
that fire that burns in their belly, and everybody gets huge setbacks along the way. And, especially as women, there's stuff on there about being sexually groomed as a teenager in the industry. There's just so many things in there, like failed love and then, this illness. So I think there's so
Yeah.
many tangents that can resonate with a lot of different readers.
And it's so real because, you look at people who are successful and you go, oh, they probably didn't have any hurdles or they had it so easy or this and that. But yours shows how real your journey was and all that you've overcome. You really have overcome so much. And it's like nothing could stop you from your dream. And so I'm so excited for your book. And I want to know what your goals are for it. Do you have big plans for it? Do you have a vision for, I'm sure you do, for how you envision your book impacting your readers?
Thank you so much for the care and the love that you've taken for my story. So I very much appreciate that. My goal really for the book was to, and I know this sounds a little cliche, but it's true. If I had one letter from one young woman that wrote to me and said, I could see myself in some of these stories, was really the main goal for a huge mission. I mean, writing a book
Yeah.
is, my God, a labor of love, and took me almost 2 years to write this. And so uh, I got many letters and many emails from
Oh,
girls from different cultural backgrounds from around the world. And that has like set my heart on fire and really
yeah.
um, shown me that everybody has this story inside them, right? You just have to take the time to sit down and write it and get it out into the
Right.
world. And so my next dream, there's some interest in potentially turning it into something on screen, which,
Yeah.
yeah, which would be incredible. My mum and my sister are so funny. They're like already thinking about who's going to play us. Like, what they're so great. And so and my niece that I told you earlier that's rapping, my sister's like, she's got to play the young you. I said,
That's
yeah,
hilarious. They've already got it sorted out.
I've already got it sorted out. I'm like, yeah, she definitely does.
You'll
Um,
get to you'll get to have your original rap in there of
that's
her,
that's right. I
chiming in.
look, Tracy, I think the world needs to hear my lyrical prowess,
I think so too. I I read that the original rap out of just
Yeah.
the that you said, and I thought, well, she could turn this into a kid's book. And
Oh,
that's my
oh,
mind always
wow.
goes kids book. But you could,
Kids book. I love it. I love the kids, just like Wu-Tang.
yeah,
And so yeah, that's the next dream, I think. And I'm writing more essays. It's funny, I feel like I'm learning how to write more after writing the book. And I've always been a journalist, but creative nonfiction is a whole new ball game. And
yeah,
I'm really leaning into now being an essay writer, because I don't know if I have the patience to write a whole new book right now, but I
right,
think I'm
right.
going to wade into it with some essay writing.
Yeah, or maybe you could do an anthology of a
Yeah,
bunch of women who have done cool things like that.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. I think
yeah,
bringing more voices together has always been
yeah,
my mission as well.
yeah. Well, I am so thrilled that I got the chance to speak with you today. We're going to post links to your book, and I wish you just so much success. And I'm so thankful for this moment. And thank you so much,
Oh,
so much for
Tracy,
being
you're
here.
so beautiful. Hip hop brought us together, right?
Yes, it did. And I'm sure it does that for a lot of people too.
Amen. Thank you so much for having me. And yep, Tell Her She's Dreaming is a dream come true. It's out in the United States. I can't believe it.
Yes, it just came out. So, listeners, go and get this book. It's incredible. It's moving. You'll cry. I did.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.